What's going on, guys? Anime Okage back at it again, and today we're jumping into the chapter spoilers for My Hero Academia 413. Let's get into it. A lot of really cool and scary things are going on. We start out the chapter by going to a flashback whenever Star and Stripes is actually fighting against All for One in the Vestige world. At the very top of the panel, we actually see the vestige of All Might watching it happen. It's almost if ever since Shigaraki and Deku touched Vestige worlds, that I guess now there's a link open of some kind. Or maybe because All for One derives from One for All. Or maybe because One for All derives from All for One, so that makes a linkage to the Vestige world to begin with. The Vestiges weren't One for All's kind of thing to begin with, and they kind of ripped it off All for One. But anyways, we're watching All Might, watching Star and Stripe rebel against All for One within the Vestige world. And I believe whenever they were in that Vestige world, we actually saw Star and Stripe split into many versions of herself, rebelling against All for One as a whole and destroying and ripping apart all the different quirk vestiges that were stored within them. And I know a lot of the story goes to inherited will of some kind, but I didn't know that inherited will could make vestiges talk cross people and across space-time. Because initially when we saw Star and Stripe's hand pointing, we thought it was in Deku's One for All Vestige world. But it's actually in the All for One Vestige world, where in her final moments, she's actually pointing to some kind of crack within this Chibaku Tensei kind of like combining of a whole bunch of, looks like buildings of some kind, or I guess just the world in general. And it's actually Shigaraki burying and sealing away the Tenko Shimura aspect of him. But Star and Stripe is pointing to a crack. And that crack she's pointing to, All Might can see. But anyway, she's pointing at the crack and she's saying there's a sad child over there, referring to Tenko Shimura. All Might wakes up as if he were just in a bad dream, and he sees Edgeshot, and Edgeshot tells him to stay awake. But All Might is super confused because how could he see the Vestige world when he's so far away from Midoriya? I believe since All Might is connected to this world, that whenever Midoriya is in trouble, All Might is able to see it as if it's kind of like shooting a pulse through anyone that is able to help or is connected to Midoriya in that way. I still don't know how Edgeshot is alive. I guess he's not gonna die.
What?
The guy turned into a heart and somehow he's still this little tiny talking head. I don't know if he's cursed to be that forever or he only has a limited amount of time, but it's crazy how he's still in the story and still talking and just a part of the plot is in whole. It almost seems like the sacrifice that he made. I don't know. It just may be not that bad. I would hate to see later in the story him get his full body back and almost no consequence to his sacrifice. He's just like this little snaky worm thing.
All of this going on up here is what's causing me the most physical discomfort.
But as All Might looks out into the distance towards Mount Fuji, he says, is One for All becoming frayed? And this is probably because of Shigaraki stealing the fourth user and its quirk, Danger Sense. There seems to be a beginning of an unraveling of the quirk, although I didn't know that an unraveling could happen. I don't know what to make of it so far, but we'll see later in the chapter that it doesn't really matter because there is a plan. All Might's not the only one confused by Star and Stripe showing up. Shigaraki actually recalls seeing her in his Vestige world and wonders why he's seeing her now even after defeating her. But he remembers that Star and Stripe said that all heroes will inherit the will of the other, which is showing the main plot line of this entire story, that we will inherit the will of the ones before us and choose to carry it on. At least that's Izuku's story. I don't know for the rest of everybody else. Now that I say that, he's the only one doing that exact thing. But Shigaraki pulls back and shoots some kind of big giant energy blast or a big giant air pressure wave, and he knocks Midoriya across the entire landscape. And as we see Midoriya writhing in pain in a crater in the ground, the second user actually appears to him. The second user, Kudo, wants to relay a message to Midoriya saying that All Might's Vestige has actually seen the crack in Shigaraki's layer of hate and frustration that he's created within his memories, holding back Tenko Shimura, the boy that Midoriya desperately wants to save. Kudo goes on to tell Midoriya that during the fight with Star and Stripe, Shigaraki got a big wound, a big mental wound actually, nothing of the body that he can actually regenerate, so it's something that will stay there and can't be healed by any quirk. But Kudo reassures Midoriya that Shigaraki is just too strong right now, and if they're gonna beat him, they're gonna have to beat him from the inside.
Oh! Ew! Dude! What the fuck?
Inside the quirk factor, to be clear.
But let me stay focused.
We're not pulling any Ant-Man moves. But honestly, the second user saying that Shigaraki is too strong now and Midoriya is no match for him, it's not true. Because if Midoriya hasn't been holding back this entire time because he wants to save Tenko, he could have got rid of Shigaraki a long time ago. In the last chapter, he literally just punched his whole arm off. He has the natural instinct, he has the battle IQ, and he has the strength and speed to do it. He's just choosing not to. But I guess in Kudo's argument, he's saying that he's no match for Shigaraki at this point if he wants to keep his ideals in mind. Which I don't see a way out of this if Midoriya wants to beat Shigaraki and save Tenko. It's not going to be from punches. Which I understand, because at this point, Midoriya is not going to beat Shigaraki from the outside. He's going to have to beat him from the inside because punches won't save Tenko. Then a big giant argument within the Vestige world ensues, because some Vestiges do not like Kudo's plan. And Kudo's plan is to transfer One For All into Shigaraki forcefully. Kind of like when in the movie, like they're trying to steal away the power or the light from somebody, and they just give them way more than they can handle. Oh, you want it? Take it. That kind of thing. It's been used before, but I don't hate it here. And only because there's a different element being used. Kudo explains to En that he needs to expand his idea of what transferring is and what transferring could be. And he uses a funny example, like remember whenever Izuku didn't want to break his body with One For All, so he had to imagine the egg in the microwave not popping, but still heating up and transferring energy? He goes along the same route, but he actually uses a reference to whenever Bakugo gives Midoriya the papers that he's passing back in class, but he throws them really hard and straight in Midoriya's face. In the way that we usually see these quirks transferred, with One For All, it takes willingly giving up the quirk and transferring some DNA to the next user. When it comes to All For One, it takes stabbing them with some kind of tendril and forcibly taking it, or Shigaraki reaching into their own Vestige world and forcibly taking it from there. The boys are planning a little switcheroo. I believe they plan to use Black Whip as those tendrils and give One For All to Shigaraki forcibly, piece by piece. And now that they're going to try the plan, now they're arguing about who's going to go first. Kudo, the second user, volunteers to be first, but En, who is the user of Smokescreen, says that it should be him because his quirk isn't really doing jack shit right now. Which, with Shigaraki having Danger Sense and Search, he couldn't be more right. But Kudo refuses, and En says, well, what if Shigaraki is able to use Gear Shift? It'll be completely over for everybody. But Kudo has an answer for this. Right now, we see that Izuku is only being able to move around by puppeteering himself with Black Whip. It's actually even hard for him to breathe currently, because of the recoil from Gear Shift. Kudo believes that if they give Gear Shift to Shigaraki, that recoil won't have its cooldown period, and then it'll start to affect Shigaraki and bring him down. It's a huge risk because this has never been proven or tried, so this is all a guess on Kudo's part. If he gives him Gear Shift and that breaks him down, awesome. If he gives him Gear Shift and now Shigaraki can use Gear Shift, it's probably over immediately. And Bruce, the third user, the user of Fajin, he agrees with En, and he says it's way too risky, which this is all just a gut feeling, so it is very, very risky. But Kudo says he wants to believe in the boy who hasn't given up on saving a heart. A heart talking about Tenko Shimura. He sees Izuku's conviction to saving another person, and I believe he's becoming inspired. We start to get flashbacks of Midoriya being next to All Might and being so thankful for everything he's been given. And Nana chimes in saying that it's not because Izuku is afraid that he's not going to be able to do it or afraid of the recoil or backlash from giving away his quirk. He's upset because he considers One For All an absolute treasure from his hero. We have to remember that Izuku at heart is still a fanboy and a young kid, just like we all were at one point. For me, if Goku came down and gave me his powers, you'd have a really hard time convincing me that I needed to give them up. And not just because of the power I'd be giving up, but for the incredible gift I was given. I guess in this moment, because he's not getting the okay or the it's all right from All Might, he's having second guesses or second thoughts, but these don't last long. We can't blame him for thinking about it when someone says give up your quirk, especially whenever you weren't born with it and you were given that quirk as a gift. So they're moving on with the plan. And Kudo asks Banjo, the 5th user, I believe it's the 5th user, the owner of Black Whip, he asks him to stay behind and help Midoriya. But this is the part I'm kind of confused about. He asks Yoichi to help, the first user, but he asks him just to help. He doesn't say which one he wants him to help. Either he wants Yoichi to get transferred and break apart Shigaraki from the inside, or does he want him to help by staying behind with Banjo and Izuku by giving Izuku some kind of, stockpiling quirk still? Because I really think that if he had the stockpiling quirk and the Black Whip, kind of regressing back to before he opened and activated all the other vestiges, that would still make Izuku incredibly powerful. And also it'd be like going back to the beginning, which is kind of cool. But Kudo asks Midoriya, will you do it? And he says yes. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is the first time that Kudo has referred to him by his name and not the 9th or boy. It kind of shows a level of respect that Kudo has gained for Izuku, because at this point, how could you not give him props? He's made it farther than any other user of One For All, with keeping his ideals intact. We then move into this awesome panel of Izuku wrapping his entire body in Black Whip. It's moving underneath his skin, it's moving on top of his skin, it's coming off his back like tendrils. It kind of reminds me of the Iron Spider suit, whenever Spider-Man has the legs that come out and he's able to use them just with his mind. But he makes this awesome Black Whip face guard, and then if you look at his hands actually have like claws at the end of each of one of his fingers. It looks so cool, and I know this is a long shot and it's not even out in the manga currently, but I really hope this gets to be a skin in My Hero Ultra Rumble. I might actually play as Deku if they have that. And it's also kind of really cool throwback to back in his Dark Deku arc or his Deku Black arc. I'm not sure which one they're calling it, but back whenever he was super dark and edgy with whenever he was out as a vigilante. And I'm pretty sure in this sequence that Deku uses his tendrils to like swipe away at Shigaraki and actually rips off Shigaraki's arm again. And Shigaraki looks at him and says, looking at you right now, I would never guess you're a hero. And it's so cool because Deku's like, I'm going to save you, but I'm not going to be nice about it. So, what did you guys think? Go ahead and leave your comments below to what you think is going to happen, what you think about giving up One For All, and what you think about Deku's new look. I, for one, think this is super cool, and I'm really interested to see where the story is going to move forward on here. It doesn't look like the original writing or what Horikoshi would normally do, but I'm still excited to see what comes of it. In a very short amount of time, my videos have been getting some likes, some comments, and a ton more views than I ever thought. So thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. Every like, comment, subscribe is so greatly appreciated. I'm Anime Okage, and I'll see you next time.